Hey folks, welcome to another episode of Enter Chat. And this time we are recording it in the IDNA building at the Microsoft campus. And I have two special guests with me, Gayan, Randeny, and Jas Suri. They are from my same team, CxE, and they look after everything to do with Entra External ID, previously Azure AD B2C. So Gayan and Jas, can you just give a quick intro to yourself?
Cool. I'll go. I'm Jas. Been working on Entra External ID for now a couple of years. And prior to that, I've been helping customers deploy Azure AD B2C solutions for almost 6 years. And so now we're working on how do we get our Azure AD B2C customers over onto the new Entra External ID product.
Very similar job description, has been working on B2C for a while, now working on external ID and the migration scenarios.
Awesome. Gayan and I go way back. We actually both from
Sri Lanka.
And way back in 2000, was it?
Yeah, I joined Microsoft the year before Microsoft Sri Lanka got established. Then you joined Microsoft. So, yeah.
Sri Lanka. Yes, I was in Microsoft Sri Lanka for a short time, for like 3 months. That's when I first met Gayan. So like over a 20-year period, we've known each other. Awesome. So tell us, for people who don't know, what is B2C and what is external ID and what's happening? What's the overall story there?
Bit of background? I'll give a bit of background.
Yeah.
And first tell what is external ID?
Yeah.
Or B2C.
No, we'll start with
we start with B2C.
We'll start with Azure AD B2C. So first thing, just to set the scene, Azure AD B2C is an identity product, but it's for customer identity and access management. So it's different to your standard Entra ID identity and access management, which is for enterprise solutions. So customer identity and access management is more for your external facing applications. So you as an organization most likely have customers who you sell product to, and you need to offer them identity so that they can purchase your product. Just like anyone watching here is probably a customer of Microsoft and they have an account with Microsoft and they purchase Office 365. That is customer identity and access management. So that's Azure AD B2C. And that was our long-standing customer identity and access management solution for the past 7, 8, 9 years,
maybe,
something like
maybe
that.
10 years.
Right?
Who are some of the big customers, where we publish case studies on that are using B2C?
Well, I guess Subway would be a very large customer.
Yeah. So if anyone of you ordered Subway, you would have signed into Azure B2C.
Yeah, and really large retailers. I don't want to name drop right now, but some of the largest retailers, 160 to 200 million identities in each tenant.
Yeah.
And we primarily focused on scalability, security, and customizability. So architecturally, Azure AD B2C was focused on delivering those capabilities than the enterprise features. So, which leads into the external ID story.
Different stories, right? But like the scale is insane.
Scale is huge.
This is in one tenant.
100 million users plus, single tenant.
Million. Not 1 million, not 2 million.
No.
100 million plus.
We have passed 100 million. So we have 160 million in one of those tenants, growing about 18% year over year.
Awesome.
So it's an exponential curve.
It's crazy. And in some places, I know it's like the entire country, people signing into that.
Yeah, we do citizen ID, like Government of Ireland is citizen ID. So every citizen in Ireland will have Azure AD B2C identity.
Amazing.
And that's, I think, 6 million accounts.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's where we're talking of entirely different scale of the number of users.
Correct. And the use cases and the demand patterns in the United States when the holiday season hit, we had once 82 million oaths within 6 hours.
Yeah, think about Black Friday. Yeah. Things like this.
Right. Yeah.
The scale is huge.
Up, right? Like if users can't sign in.
Well, if users can't sign in, organizations who are using this identity product are going to lose a lot of money. So there's a huge amount at stake.
Right. Yeah. Okay. That explains B2C.
That's B2C.
Right. So why is it going away and what's happening?
History.
Yeah. So it's going away eventually. And essentially what happened was over a period of time, customers realize that B2C is awesome for customizability, the scale, the performance, and all that. At the same time, the use cases changed. People were asking for things like passkeys and some sort of privilege identity management, the features that they were very familiar in the enterprise space. And people in the enterprise space said, we want some of that flexibility that you have on the B2C side. So we had this decision to make. Should we port these two technologies to each other, which is a lot of work and a lot of maintenance work, or should we look at converging these two technologies so that we can be scalable and performant and flexible at the same time?
And agile. I mean, we did actually port things from one side to the other.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
the basic capabilities like OpenID Connect
Mhm.
were in Entra ID, are in Entra ID, but they were also replicated, double the code, in Azure AD B2C, which means slightly different implementations of the protocol as well,
So
actually.
there were different teams. or
Different teams,
same
different
team
engineering
and built
teams.
it twice.
Same team, yeah, different teams ended up building something twice. Implementation was slightly different.
Some of the cool features that I would love in enterprise, workforce version is like being able to customize the entire login.
Yeah.
Right? Like be able to do fancy things.
Yeah, in Azure AD B2C, you could do custom HTML, JavaScript, CSS. You could do
But
those
we
things.
can't do that with Entra
But we
ID.
can't do that in
Entra
Entra.
ID.
We can just change the CSS and
Yep.
that's it.
Correct. And also remember, there were some back-end technical decisions we had to take when we were designing B2C, because the hardware stack and the software stacks were limited, right? So scale and things like that we had to worry about in B2C architecture no longer applies. We are on a completely different hardware generation, a completely different software
The
generation.
underlying.
Stuff. So anyway, so what we decided is that, hey, if we can unify the model, now we will be able to bring these two capabilities, not 100% that everything you can do in external ID on the enterprise side, but we can unify as much as we can.
Right. And for admins, it'll be a skill, right? Like today, the skills are
Correct.
slightly different. If you know how to manage Entra ID, you can manage an external
Yes.
ID tenant.
Today, the skills are very different, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of XML involved, right? In
Exactly.
B2C.
Yeah. So there's when you create identity experiences. So this is something that as an approach in B2C, we go by identity experiences, and identity experiences are kind of abstractions described using XML. So if you know that, or you have to learn the domain-specific XML language, and you are writing program, journey step 1, journey step 2, journey step 3, and as someone who has contributed the most to our GitHub repo, I think
many samples.
There's more than 100,000 lines of XML code collectively in there.
Anyone who's done B2C, if you've been using those GitHub samples, you have the people.
Yeah.
Jas is one of the main people who built.
Yeah. We stood up a nice repo which had a lot of samples in there. Like all the trending kind of authentication flows that customers wanted to build are pretty much represented in that repo, and all in XML in this framework, which is super flexible, and it lets you do quite a lot of different things inside it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. So that leads to what Entra External ID became. So the plan was we want to maintain the same level of security, same level of scale, and slowly start bringing the capabilities of the flexibility, user experiences, and things like that into that same platform. It has gone through multiple internal code names, but right now it's Entra External ID. And the idea is that you will still have differentiated capabilities on, for example, custom domains will be available in Entra External ID for customers, whereas on the external ID capability, which is traditional B2B, will not have that capability.
Workforce tenants.
Workforce tenants.
What does it mean? Like for those who don't know.
Yeah. So if you're subway.com, you probably would want to keep everything within your application under the same domain. right? So your application is subway.com. Your authentication happens on auth.subway.com instead of like subway.microsoft.com.
Today, for any Entra customer, it's login.microsoft.
Yeah, the point was that it was about brand as well, maintaining customer brand. So it was a vanity domain name essentially.
Right.
They didn't want any Microsoft labeling across any of the assets in their ecosystem, and that was about branding. So providing that custom domain name in Azure AD B2C and Entra External ID, external tenants as we call it. I think we should make that distinction. It's Entra External ID is actually the SKU, but the tenant type is an external tenant. And that is for your customer identity and access management solutions.
And in Entra, we call them a workforce tenant?
So an Entra tenant, exactly. So an Entra workforce tenant is something that your organization would use for your enterprise needs. But Entra External ID is an external tenant for customer identity and access management.
Right?
For consumers.
Workforce and consumer tenants.
Yeah.
Awesome. So people have to migrate over is one of the...
So as time goes by, customers will be looking to migrate towards Entra External ID, which is an absolutely, although it serves the same purpose, it is a different product. Like it's architected differently. And the persona who will be managing an Entra External ID tenant will vastly differ from the persona of someone who's managing an Azure AD B2C tenant. And that's because it's configured in a vastly different way. Azure AD B2C really requires someone with a lot of identity skills, but also developer-orientated skills, because they have to build these large XML frameworks that essentially execute these authentication flows. Whereas in Entra External ID, you're not going to have these crazy XML flows. Instead, you go into the portal, you're going to be able to go select some boxes, and then out comes what we call a user flow, where someone can actually go in and log into an app, which is much, much more different. And that's going to be more of an IT admin type of persona who can go in and do that.
And if you are a developer, we introduce native auth APIs on external ID side so that you can build, you can use what you're familiar with. You can use what tools you're familiar with, JavaScript, Swift.
So you can completely skin the login page, and you don't even show the Microsoft login page.
And we should make a distinction there, because you could have an API-based auth in B2C, Azure AD B2C, which was ROPC, but ROPC doesn't support any sort of interactive flows. So you couldn't do MFA, which was a big problem. Whereas with the native auth APIs in Entra External ID, we do support these interactive flows. There is a back and forth conversation that we manage, and that can prompt the user for MFA or email OTP, SMS, etc. So
it's based on an open standard called Direct Client Interaction Grants. It's an auth flow. It is not yet fully ratified, so they may not match exactly, but it's inspired by that standard.
Right. Okay. So does Entra External ID, is it in feature parity with B2C now? Does it have all the features that B2C has?
Not yet.
So
we are.
So that's a decision point for someone to migrate off B2C.
Absolutely.
They would need to evaluate today.
You would need to check, like, if Azure AD B2C was fairly flexible, so we saw customers build all sorts of things
to a product, right? And it was being built over like
many years.
Right.
And so, to bring those capabilities from an out of the box, hey, I'm an admin, I'm going to go click XYZ in the portal, that's a completely different kind of product management side of things versus what we did in Azure AD B2C, which was basically an SDK and you can build whatever you wanted. Now Entra External ID is a product-led approach. So any sort of capability that you would want, our engineering teams would need to essentially build out. And so that means it's going to take us a little bit longer potentially to get to a point where everything that was possible in Azure AD B2C is possible in Entra External ID. But the key difference is that you won't have to write XML. Instead, it will just be a kind of click box exercise. I want these things, like a checkout system, and then you have a flow, right? So that's the positive. That's the advantage of moving to Entra External ID, is that eventually you'll be able to do what was quite complex in Azure AD B2C in an easy way, but also much easier to maintain. The overheads are much less.
Yeah,
The learning curve.
Your learning curve is much lower.
yeah. I liken it to like we gave you Lego techniques that you can build very complicated things,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Right now we have Lego, and we will eventually give you more pieces that you can build more things.
That's right.
So for someone looking to migrate, if they've already built on B2C and they need to migrate, what's the thing they should look for, right? Like what should be the strategy for them? How should they evaluate? And
So I mean, you mentioned about, hey, is it, the feature parity? Okay, so that's one thing to consider. But that's a fluid thing, right? Like as we move forward with engineering, you're going to see more things released. So I'd say the first thing to look at is, look at how to make progress. So take maybe the simplest application and try to understand, what are the features that you used, or what are the scenarios that you built out in Azure AD B2C, and how does that map into Entra External ID, and start to see if you can translate that across. So that's probably the first thing you'd look at. And I think the next thing is user migration, which is probably where everyone is going to be looking at. Like, how do I migrate my users, right? And so I think there's a few different ways. You have to think about from Microsoft perspective, some of our customers have hundreds of millions of accounts.
Yeah.
Right?
It's
So
huge migration.
that's a huge, absolutely huge. And so we wouldn't expect, extremely large customers to go create all those accounts. But there is a set of approaches that you can take. So obviously the brute force thing is you go create the accounts again and you reset passwords. So anyone can do that today. Like you can go use Graph API, export the users from the old tenant, import them into the new tenant, and have them go through a forgot password flow.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And we have few customers who use B2C policies to create a simultaneous user in the external ID tenant. So as users start using B2C, they are populating the external ID tenant with username, password, everything. And
the pre-migration.
And they'll have the parity between these two. And when so they were waiting for some building blocks to be available on the external ID. And once those features are available, they'll essentially switch the application over to the new platform.
They've already started.
So they're pushing accounts from their legacy identity provider, which could be Azure AD B2C, or it could be a third-party vendor, or it could be a homegrown solution. Because those customers also may want to come into Entra External ID, and they could take the approach that Gayan just explained, like pushing those accounts in as they're logging in today. That's a good approach. Like if you did that for 6 months, you probably migrate like the most active users. If they haven't logged in within 6 months, probably they're not active. So it's quite a good approach to move those now. So that's another way. Another way is, one of our customers that said, well, we're going to go passwordless. So they just took the accounts, just pushed them into Graph, into the new Entra External ID tenant and said, we're going passwordless, email OTP. We don't need to migrate passwords. And then they can just move the app across whenever they want. So that's another way.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And then there are a couple of things I think will be world premiering here.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, on the podcast.
On the podcast.
First to hear on the podcast.
Yeah. So I'll talk about the just-in-time migration. Few customers that we have already spoken to. So some of you listening to this may be already, it's not a surprise. But the idea is the same way that most identity migrations happen. You will switch your so you will pre-migrate the users other than the password. So you're exporting the users using Graph, importing them in with a random password that nobody knows. And you set a special attribute with a flag that says this user password is migrated or not. And you set it to no for everybody. Now you switch an application to the new platform, and the user enters the username password into the new platform, and we make an API call to your old platform to see if password is right. If the password is right, then we write it into the new platform. So the flow is the application goes to external ID. External ID asks for your username and a password. Behind the scene, we make an API call to the backend, validate it. If it's valid, we write it into external ID and flip that switch. So the next time you come in, we don't make that API call. So over a period of time, as users start to migrate, you will be able to get the passwords across.
So they move seamlessly
Seamlessly.
from B2C
B2C
into,
Yeah.
into external ID.
Yeah,
Correct.
and doesn't just apply to B2C.
B2C,
Just in time migration can be from other vendors. And
So that API you can
Yep.
decide
Yeah.
where it calls into.
Yes, so the API call that gets made from Entra External ID platform is actually made to your API, isn't it?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
So yeah,
It's made to your own API. So then you make the call into the legacy provider however you want. It could be B2C, you can use ROPC, or it could be some other platform, or it could be a homegrown solution like a database. And then you check the password and you tell us if it's good.
Yep.
And if it is, I think we write the password in.
Correct.
That's right.
And please read up on custom authentication extensions. This is going to be another authentication extensions called on password submit, and that is what will enable you
event.
to do
Yep.
the event that will enable this.
Nice. That's a really neat feature. Will it
Yep.
come to Entra ID?
Well,
There
hopefully
are few
not.
people. Yeah. So
Hopefully we can remove
Right.
passwords for Entra ID, so that
Right,
we don't
exactly.
need that over there.
Exactly.
Only Siam customers still like passwords.
Yeah. We envision a future
Without passwords. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and yeah,
We
that's
all
the
do.
thing, right?
Yeah.
A lot of the investments on
Moving away
from
from
Correct.
passwords.
But it's
Yeah.
really critical for these
Yeah.
scenarios, right? Because why you have.
Yeah.
I'll take this opportunity to talk about. I was doing an EBC, which is a enterprise briefing center session, and there's a slide that talks about how many password spray attacks that we have seen a day, and it has gone from like 3 days ago. I looked at the latest numbers; it was like 8,000.
Per
It used to be an hour.
Oh, an hour? Okay.
Yeah, and it used to be like
Yeah.
540 something in 2023, right? So we keep that
It's exponentially increasing.
exponentially growing, right?
Yeah.
So passwordless is the way to go.
Yep.
Yeah. And for external ID and B2C, the consumer space, there's a lot of fraud and
Yeah.
things involved, right? Like people creating fake accounts.
Yeah.
And
We see in the consumer world that customers are starting to move towards more secure and passwordless approaches.
Mechanisms, yeah.
But there are certain customers that are tied with certain regulatory or compliance reasons that they have to stick with it. And then also, this space is more than just security. It's about, how the marketing teams and the business teams going to work together to ensure that customers can still have a good experience when they get rid of something that they're used to. So there's still some work to do there, which is interesting, very different from the enterprise space, right? You can go force someone to use a FIDO key, but it doesn't work in consumer space. Yeah. It doesn't work.
You can't do that.
You can't do that for consumers,
Mhm.
right? And again, one other thing is with citizen ID,
Mhm.
you can't assume that everyone has a smartphone. You suddenly can't.
Yeah.
Correct.
So there's some other challenges that our customers will have to overcome.
Yeah. Having said that, we also are working on bringing in passwordless options into external ID. You'll hear about them very soon.
We've got email OTP password right now, right?
Right now.
But there'll be more coming.
Nice.
Passwordless.
Passwordless.
Okay.
That's our Ignite announcements.
Yeah, potentially.
Yeah, potentially, yes.
Awesome.
So the other
Yes.
method.
And there's one other method which we're currently working on. And so that is for our kind of larger Azure AD B2C customers. And this is what we call a hybrid approach. Okay. And so we just talked about user migration. There's a lot of complexities there, moving users, hundreds of millions or tens of millions, whatever it might be, passwords, etc. And also, I think what actually we didn't mention was when you have these two systems up and running and you're doing a user migration, you actually have to keep them in sync as well. Because if a user resets a password in Entra External ID, you got to go back. And the same for B2C, you got to go forwards. So that's an added complexity in a solution where you're doing just in time or password reset, but running these two things together.
When you have like 100 million.
Yeah, that's a very,
it becomes.
And we know synchronization tasks are very difficult, right?
Yeah.
Even Microsoft struggles with it. So there's this other technique that we're looking at, which is called a hybrid tenant. And in a hybrid tenant, what's actually happening is we're enabling the Entra External ID capabilities within your existing Azure AD B2C tenant. Okay. And so when you make this change, nothing really happens to begin with. Like your existing B2C applications will continue to work. Users will still be able to log in. But you have this additional Entra External ID endpoint that you can use to authenticate users with Entra External ID applications. Okay. So they exist side by side. You have the Azure AD B2C endpoints existing, and you have the Entra External ID endpoints existing at the same time.
Right.
Okay. And now you do not need to migrate users because the user store is shared between the endpoints. It's under the hood, right? Your user store spans the tenant, but your tenant exposes now these additional endpoints.
Right.
User store and application registrations are now shared.
Right.
So when you're ready, you can take a Azure AD B2C application, right? Hitting, I don't know, the B2C login.com endpoints.
Yeah.
And essentially migrate the MSAL configuration inside that application to talk to Entra External ID endpoints. And when you do that, your existing Azure AD B2C users will be able to log in with their existing credentials seamlessly. And if you have, I don't know, more B2C applications, they will still be able to log into B2C with their same creds. More Entra External ID application, they can still log into Entra External ID applications. If they reset their password, they're only resetting it in one place, right? Because the directory is shared between these two endpoints in a hybrid tenant. So there's no synchronization tasks. So that whole user migration complexity goes away. So that's something that we're looking at.
Okay. So that way, when someone who has a B2C tenant can create an external ID and sort of there's a relationship set up.
They don't need to create a new tenant. So it's within the same tenant.
Oh, so you just get an endpoint.
You just get the endpoints enabled in your existing tenant.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the magic. So that's why it's called hybrid, right? Because you have these additional capabilities enabled inside your B2C tenant.
Nice.
Yeah.
And that's something you're considering.
That's something, that we're looking at, we're working out.
Yeah. So preference is going to be if you can migrate the password to a brand new tenant. And if your tenant is reasonably sized, let's say less than 1 million users, it would be easier for you to just use the just-in-time migration and get the active users to cut over into the new one. Yeah. And the thing adding on to what Jas said is that when you are in hybrid mode, you still need to create the user experience using user flows, which is native to external ID. So you will essentially take the policy and re-express what's in the policy using the Entra External ID. And then you will switch the application to use an event point.
Yeah. So even though you're in a hybrid tenant, your Entra External ID applications can't be utilizing those old Azure AD B2C policies. You have to recreate them in the Entra External ID space. So like there's a blade, you go use that experience, which has its own constraints as to what you can configure, right? Based off of the capabilities of Entra External ID.
Right.
So the idea would be is that before you move your application, you would mirror as best as you can one of your Azure AD B2C policies that power one of your B2C apps, but you would mirror it in the Entra External ID space. And so you would use the new config options to go create that artifact.
Right.
Okay? That's how it works.
Okay, so you can slowly switch.
You can slowly switch over.
And it could be, you could move maybe the mobile app first.
Yeah, exactly.
Depending on whatever the config that is.
Right.
And you still have the opportunity to move, let's say, for example, a mobile app. If it was using a web sign-in on Azure AD B2C, you have the opportunity to convert it to a native app on the Entra External ID tenant, on the Entra External ID side of your hybrid tenant.
Yeah.
So something you couldn't do in B2C.
You couldn't do that in B2C.
Now with the hybrid approach, you can, while still keeping the
B2C user base as well
side of it and its base, you can start using the
new capabilities.
Right.
Yep.
Nice.
Yeah.
So it gives sort of best of both worlds.
Both worlds, yeah.
So it's easier to migrate, and you can use the new capabilities of Entra External ID.
Yeah, but idea is that we want people to get off B2C engine.
Way to move off.
Right.
It's a way to move,
The features.
So it's a one-way journey from native B2C to hybrid to native external ID.
Nice.
So that's the key migration strategies right now.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
lots of choice and options.
There's a lot of options.
If you're a B2C architect or external IT architect to think of.
There's a ton of options that you can take, and you're free to choose whichever route that you prefer. And you're free to migrate applications in which order you prefer to, right?
Yeah. I would say the most important thing, or a couple of important things is, number one, get familiar. If you're already on B2C, get familiar with external ID. We have a lot of documentation. There's a deployment guide that we wrote that details that keep your B2C technical contact information up to date. Because we will start reaching out to, like in a staged manner, we will start reaching out to some customers. And if your tenant technical contact information is up to date, you will receive those communications in a timely manner.
The other question I get from a lot of customers is like, they obviously have an active Azure AD B2C deployment. The most popular question the most common question I get is like, okay, so if I'm continuing to work on my Azure AD B2C policies, what should I do to make sure that they're easy to migrate into Entra External ID? And right now, really, my key advice to those customers is try to externalize your logic. So Azure AD B2C had a lot of different tooling inside custom policy, especially if using custom policy, right? Like claim transformations and these sorts of things, little bits of logic that it could run for you. And my advice would be is that try to externalize those to REST APIs, because the new Entra External ID product, the flexibility of that product is through custom extensions. And custom extensions are essentially those REST API endpoints that you used in Azure AD B2C. So try to shift that logic and try to make your custom policy as slim as possible. And then it will be easier to map that to an Entra External ID user flow when the time comes. So that's my number one advice.
It'll make it easier to be portable, right?
Yes.
You don't need to redo that work.
Exactly, because those APIs already exist, so those workflows are already there. You can reuse them in Entra External ID, and so you'll be closer to migrate.
Yeah, actually, what I would recommend is first read up on the custom authentication extensions.
Definitely.
The API contracts are much stricter on the external ID side. Those are based on our learnings from B2C, right? With flexibility becomes a lot of responsibility we pass to the customer, so that we want them to be well behaved and stuff like that. So by reducing the flexibility and enforcing certain amount of control, we are also getting some guarantees that we are failing gracefully. You're always in a deterministic state of your user journey, right? So you don't, in handling the error, you don't have to do a ton of things.
There's less work to do there.
Right. So probably Jas and I worked with some customers more time teaching how to gracefully fail than how to go on the happy path.
Correct.
Right? So please read through that, and if you are building these APIs, see if you can adhere to the new API contracts. That way you don't have to touch that API ever.
Yeah, that's even better.
It's ready.
All right. So where are those contracts? Are they published?
So
these are custom.
The custom extension. Each event will have a API reference to it, and inside that, and this is in our public documentation, each one will describe exactly what the schema looks like for the request and response format that we would be expecting.
Yeah. And custom auth extension is an Entra ID.
It's a converged, as we call converged feature.
Yeah. So some events in the future will only be available in external ID,
like the password
submit event. And some will be available on both, right? And we'll have, like, this is not the only event we are working on. We'll have more events that will give you more flexibility on what you can customize with those.
And there's always a lot happening, right? Like new features come because it's being actively developed. B2C.
Absolutely. So Azure AD B2C hasn't had any new features for at least probably a year or 2 years now. I think we stopped development. And all of the focus is on maturing Entra External ID. So we have a large set of resources, PM engineering, moving Entra External ID forwards. More and more features will be announced over the coming months.
And B2C is being worked on to make sure that it stays secure. So we're releasing a whole bunch of security updates internally that you may not see to maintain the scale and performance and all that. So if you are using B2C at whatever the scale, it will continue to function. Don't worry about it until you migrate off that.
Right. And there's no end of life yet for B2C? Or
it has been announced, right? 2030 is the
2030.
current announcement.
2030 is the end of life for B2C.
B2C.
We are all highly motivated to get you off without waiting for 2030.
There's a lot of 2030 is a long time.
It's still there's a fair few years, but if you think about, our larger customers, we know that it can take a few years sometimes.
Especially a few million and 100 million. You do need time.
And the number of apps, some of our customers have like thousands of apps. So it's not just like, it's just Subway with their one app. You have some customers who have thousands of apps, and it takes time to move them. Each application team will need to do some work and refactoring in terms of the MSAL configuration inside their apps. to work with Entra External ID versus what they were doing with Azure AD B2C. So yeah, there's a little bit of work to do there.
Yeah, and we want to give a shout out to some of our partners we are working with. And we are actively engaging some partners. They are giving us patterns, and all the things that we learn as patterns, Jas make sure that they go into the architectural guidance. So keep an eye on that. This is a lot of things changing as we go.
And partners play a huge role in
Absolutely.
Entra External ID and B2C, right? Because
Exactly. Yeah.
these are like specialized skills
Yep.
that
Yep.
people need when they're doing this. So
True.
I think they carry a lot of weight in helping customers.
And then there's a new kind of a partnership we are also looking at. So we have the system integration partners that help with configuring, migrating. We are also looking at a very in-product integrated ISVs partnerships, right? So if you want to, let's say, hypothetically, let's say you want to do identity proofing, or you want to get a threat signal from somewhere. In B2C, you ended up having to do each step, right? Do the client-side telemetry, write it to the risk engine, then you make a call to the risk engine, evaluate it, and then do something. The future we are looking for is that you go to a marketplace, pick which integration you want, and then enable it. Right. So it takes away from ton of work that you would have to do, develop and test.
I see. Yeah, looking forward to all of that maturing and people being able to leverage the skill.
The future is bright.
Future is bright.
Nice, awesome. All right, closing remarks. Any thoughts you want to leave with the audience?
I would say, keep an eye on your Azure AD B2C development. Like, ensure that you're following some of the best practices that we just discussed in terms of making sure that things are in a state where it's easy to migrate towards Entra External ID. And yeah, also consider like which strategy do you want to look at in terms of migration, right? Like it's good to try to understand exactly which direction you're heading in. So try to get on top of these things now.
Yeah,
like
think about it.
The time will probably go down pretty quickly.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, who knows? You may receive and get the technical contact information.
Yes, the technical contact info.
Make sure your technical contacts are in there so that you get all
the updates.
Yeah, and then you might see an email saying, "Hey, would you like to participate in this preview?" And then
you're in.
Yeah, and then you're in, and then we can work together to make it enable. Yeah. So again, the future is. I'm just adding on. Did I cut what you were talking? Okay. So we want to make it more secure. We wanted to make it more user friendly. We want to make it more developer friendly so that you can build your own experiences without compromising the security in a very industry standard way. So it's an exciting set of capabilities for the customers that want to build on, and there are customers who want to use these services, right? So looking forward to releasing all these features and engaging more customers.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Gayan and Jas. It's been awesome having you.
Pleasure to be here.
And thank you for coming all the way from Australia and all the way from UK
to
Redmond.
Come across the world to make this happen.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Awesome. Hope you folks catch you next time.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.